Good evening everyone in the gallery and at home, and welcome to the September 18 Council meeting. I'd like to start off with welcome and acknowledgement of country. Wodonga Council acknowledges Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of the country and as traditional custodians of the land. We respect their ancestors, elders and young people and recognise their continuous connections to lands, waters and communities across the country. Apologies, request for leave of absence and request to attend by electronic means. I note that Councillor Kev Poulton is still on leave and Councillor Olga Quilty is on leave. Any other requests? No. Any declarations by councillors of conflicts of interest? No, there being none, we move on. Move to the minutes of the previous meeting. Do I have a motion in regards to the minutes? Councillor Hall, Councillor Chamberlain. Any comments, Councillor Hall? Councillor Chamberlain. Any councillors wish to speak? There being no comment, I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Question time. Pass over to you, Acting CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've received 3 questions for tonight's meeting. I just would like to start by saying that councillors have received all the questions today, so they are aware of the questions I'm going to read out. So the first one from Mr. Newton, Philip Newton. It refers to the removal of the pine tree. So what I'd like to do is to mark it as received and then move the item to 11.1 and it can form part of council's consideration of this item. Is Mr. Newton here tonight? No. Okay. I have 2 questions from Cassandra Wilson. The first one talks about the rates in West Wodonga being reduced while rates in Killara have increased. She asked, how does council justify the rates in Killara being increased, yet they have bare minimum facilities out there? She talks about lawns being maintained, about public toilets, off-leash dog areas in Killara being on floodplains. Her second question also relates to the rates, which is about rates notices arriving and the values for the properties or valuations for the properties were done back in January when properties were at their peak. Unfortunately, they are no longer at their peak. Why has this not been rectified accordingly prior to the notices to go out? So I can answer part of the first question and all of the second question in that the valuation process is not a council process. The valuation process is conducted annually by the State Government Valuer General Victoria. Rating valuations are assessed as of the 1st of January of every calendar year across Victoria. The date is set by the Victorian Government, so council has no control over this date. If a person believes that the value, the COV shown on their notice, does not represent market value as of the 1st of January 2023, they may lodge an objection, and once lodged, then the valuer will contact the resident. In relation to amenity, so mowing is on a 3 to 4 week mowing schedule. It was not unusual for off-leash areas to be on floodplains, and there are 2 fenced dog parks down at Belvoir Park, which is a floodplain. Any new toilets will be considered in line with council's adopted toilet strategy, and new amenity would normally be considered as part of the capital budget. But the CEO and the Mayor, they do meet on a regular basis with the community members at Killara, and members are encouraged to come along and to raise any issues that they have with the CEO and with the Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Acting CEO. Delegates' reports, which there are none. We move on to reports for determination. it working in a minute. The first point report tonight is item 7.1, the multi-use amenities facility and changing places and bike hub. Do I have a motion, please? Councillor Lowe. Councillor Chamberlain. Councillor Lowe.
Yeah, just like to move as per recommendation, please. We'll just speak to it briefly because we've been over this a number of times, and I've voiced my opinion on other locations, etc. But this is about what the community have, the feedback on it, and I acknowledge and thank the community for taking interest in this facility and noted some of them were adding things to the amenity, things like e-chargers for electric bikes, for the bike hub side of it, and just community making sure that there's things like lighting and CCTV that may go in there. Me personally, I was about future-proofing the site and the build as well, that if the bike hub needed more amenities on that side of it, things like showers and stuff like that, that there was access to water around it, and also that the facility was built in a design that could go upwards if needed. Because I do note that there's a project that's going in next door to it that is going to bring in a lot of staff whom you'd hope would take up the opportunity to ride into the city instead of driving into the city. That was one of the things in the feedback, was people were concerned about taking away the 4 car park spaces. And I will note, I read that, and my view on that is that your 4 car park spaces are going to be used up for people with far more challenges than what you may or may not have. There's a car park strategy that you can look into that says that Wodonga's car parking roughly runs at anywhere between 60 and 85% of parking. So there's generally a car park space within 400 metres of where you need to be in Wodonga. So for those of you that may get their car park space taken up, you might just have to change your journey a little bit and arrive earlier to give yourself some more time. But in general, I think you'll find a car park space down there, and I think it's a worthy cause for it to be taking up car park spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, I'd just like to support what Councillor Lowe said. This obviously has been something that's been a change of location from a previous council meeting. And as much as I'm, can I say, disappointed that we're going to lose some car park spaces, I don't know that there was a whole lot of options in that regard. I know there was some discussion between the Mayor, the CEO and senior staff about whether or not it could be moved a few metres one way. And the simple answer was, no, it couldn't, because we didn't own the plot of land that it could go on. And I think this is appropriate position for it. The changing places side of the facility, I think, will be very important and central to Wodonga and the central business district. And I think it's a good thing going forward. Thank you.
Other councillors? Councillor Simperdorfer.
Sorry, Councillor Hall, I think we put our hands up at the same time. Look, I'm very happy to see this come to this point, but I think it was clear from my voting last time, the site across the road where it was initially planned for, I was quite happy with it over there, so I won't be supporting it on this occasion, but I think it's going to be getting up. I was happy with where it was. I think the toilets over in that part of Junction Place are required a lot more than across the road where this site is planned to be, but I'm pretty sure this is going to go through, but that's the only basis on which I'm not supporting. I was happy with the original decision where it was going, and I stand by that decision I made a number of months ago. Thank you.
Councillor Hall.
The original genesis behind this project was a loss of car park space due to the Hytham Library development. To now spend the money allocated from this project because of the car parking space loss is now resulting in loss of car parking, more loss of car parking in the CBD, which is rather ironical. But in having said that, I will support this position because I think it's the best position. It's close to Junction Place, just across the road, just across from Richardson Park, where there is a pedestrian walk, walk across. So, yeah, and I think it caters for everything that we were looking for it to cater. And so I think it's the best possible outcome with this decision tonight.
Thank you. I too recognise the irony of using car parking contribution from another job to contribute to the construction of this, and then to see 4 car parking spaces lost out of this as well. But having said all that, I think the location is the right location to be doing this facility, so I'm happy to support it. Councillor Lowe. Thank you. I put that motion. All those in favour? Councillor Lowe, Councillor Hall, Councillor Mildren, Councillor Chamberlain. Those against? Councillor Simpendorfer. The motion is carried. Moving on to the next matter, which is item 7.2, which is the draft gambling policy. Do I have a motion? Councillor Hall.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Hall, can you read that again, please? Microphone.
Okay. The council approves that the draft gambling policy be exhibited for community feedback for 21 days, after which a report be presented to council to consider any feedback and a finalised draft policy be presented to a future council meeting for determination.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lowe. Thank you. Councillor Hall.
I'm happy to see this policy go out to the community for feedback. I do really hope we receive some back. I think it's prudent that this policy does come back up to council, even if there is no feedback received from the community. It gives council the opportunity to revisit the policy again if need before the policy fully is adopted. So you can often get feedback from the community, which is feedback that is not given in a formal submission, but is still, I think, valid for us to discuss. And I think we need to be aware of this, and it may add to the policy in the long run. So, so I believe that policies like this should be adopted by the council, and they should come back and come back up to us for the final decision.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe. Reserve. Any other councillor wish to speak? Back to you, Councillor Lowe.
I'll echo Councillor Hall's words. I think it's important for community, now's the time, whenever we put out any document, in particular these types of documents, to have your say. I generally don't speak to the document until after they've gone out to community engagement, and I will run with that now. But there's some statistics in this document that you may want to have a look at. Things about being the highest in the state per head of capita for machines that we have here, and also the amount per head of capita that we actually spend on gambling in Wodonga. They're not figures that we as a city should be proud of, that's for sure. I look forward to the community's feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hall to close. Okay, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is 7.3, the draft alcohol policy. Do I have a motion? Councillor Hall.
Yes, again, I'd like to, because these two policies sort of have come up at the same time and whilst they're different, they're of a similar nature. I would like to do the same thing and make an amendment to the motion. And I'll read that out. The council approves that the draft alcohol policy be exhibited for community feedback for 21 days, after which a report will be presented to council to consider any feedback, and a finalised draft policy be presented to a future council meeting for determination.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lowe, Councillor Hall.
Look, this is going to be the same. It's much the same as the gambling policy that I mentioned before. So I'm happy to see it go out for community feedback. And as I said before, I hope we get some strong, some strong feedback received. So you know, it always makes for a stronger document in the end. And I'll leave it at that until it comes back up.
Councillor Lowe.
Yeah, probably not too dissimilar. Again, wait for the community feedback. And again, I'll just highlight the domestic violence issues that you get around that can be contributed or attributed to alcohol. So that was another statistic that was alarming within this document. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Any other councillors? Councillor Chamberlain.
Although I recognise the nature of this document, there's a couple of things that I'd just like to bring up that I would have liked to have seen in it before it went out. One of which is the propensity of some people to spend a bit of time around some of the local parks in and around the CBD during the day with open canisters of alcohol and bits and pieces, and that may very well be a policing matter, but I think we probably should be looking to address that within this framework. And I would have liked to have seen that in the document before it went out. But I'm sure, as Councillor Simpfendorfer said on the earlier issue, I'm sure it looks like it's going to go through. But I just wanted to highlight that point, that it's something that we need to address. It is a problem in the city.
Thank you, Councillor Chamberlain. Councillor Hall to close. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Councillor Lowe, Councillor Hall, Councillor Milburn, Councillor Simpendorfer. Those against? Councillor Chamberlain. Motion's carried. The next item on the agenda is item 7.4, Wodonga Racecourse Grandstand. Do I have a motion? Councillor Hall. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Simpendorfer, Councillor Hall.
Yeah, this issue's been at council quite a bit, and I've been in two minds about it since it came up for discussion. I'm not keen on spending a lot of ratepayers' money on the structure, but do understand some of the community's views to keep it. I like it myself, even though it has been said much of its heritage value has been lost over the years with changes and refurbishment to the building. The Racecourse Committee, I believe, are moving on from the developing on the land in which the grandstand is positioned, and will look elsewhere in the precinct to establish any further development going forward. So with this, the council's now left with the decision to either knock down the grandstand or renovate it to a standard which could be considered safe. If we were to consider keeping the grandstand, we will need to allocate in budget about $200,000 going forward. the 200,000 request is in the report to allow for investigative works in doing and in what we were required to do, scope of works required, what we will be able to do going forward to get it into a safe condition or usable condition. To knock down the grandstand will also cost council money, maybe not quite as much, but as the 200,000, but would still be a substantial amount, I believe. The cost to build and replace this grandstand with a new grandstand would be very significant amount of money. And after considering both options, I'm with the view that, if possible, I believe we should keep the grandstand, and so therefore I support the officer's recommendation in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Simpendorfer. Reserve. Any other councillors? Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes. I had stated at a previous meeting that I supported the idea of investigating the works. That was before we made a decision to investigate with DECA, who's the state government authority that owns the land and the grandstand, as to what our options are, given the fact that I don't believe it's in the ratepayers' best interest to be spending what could be a great deal of money renovating a grandstand that has very limited heritage value. It doesn't appear to be anything like the grandstand from, as Councillor Lowe pointed out earlier, from the 1940s, let alone from the 1920s when it was built. Now, I understand that the roof line is probably very similar, and I also understand that with a little bit of care and attention in detail, some future building that would be more appropriate, safer, and certainly more useful for all peoples of all abilities to use, could give some sort of recognition to that roof line on the basis of remembering what the past held here once before. But at this stage, I can't justify spending the ratepayers' money on an asset we don't own, and I don't believe that we can, within reasonable amounts of money, get back to a fully operational condition. Thank you.
Other councillors? Councillor Lowe.
Just question without notice, and just through you, Mr. Mayor, to the appropriate person or yourself. What was DECA's response to this?
The response from DECA, in essence, says, thanks for Council's letter requesting the Department to make a determination on the demolition of the Wodonga Racecourse Grandstand. Wodonga City Council are responsible for issuing planning permits for use and development of heritage places under the Planning and Environment Act. As the Committee of Management, which is a committee under the Crown Lands Committee, as the Committee of Management for the Reserve, Council should consult its planning department to determine the necessary requirements for modifying, amending or demolishing the grandstand, noting it may be a place of local significance under the Council's planning scheme. They say, I understand that the Committee of Management has the authority to issue a permit to demolish the grandstand, subject to listing on the heritage overlay. Public land manager consent is the responsibility of Wodonga Council. The grandstand is not listed on the Victorian Heritage Database and therefore does not trigger the Heritage Act. Once all required internal due processes have been followed, the Council should then seek landowners' consent from DECA. I do not foresee objection from DECA provided the recommendation aligns with all relevant legislation. That's in essence the entirety of the letter. Councillor Lowe, please continue.
Thank you. So in essence, they've just passed it back to us, and there's no listed state heritage overlay on this site. So that's good to know, because I'm kind of fall within behind Councillor Chamberlain there. We seem to have made a decision, and now we just keep standing one to the side, because I also don't want to be throwing ratepayers good money after bad to an asset that we don't own, nor do I think we should have the responsibility of investigating it or rehabilitating it. And to what level do you rehabilitate it to, as been pointed out. So I'm struggling to, I understand this money is for investigative works to find out what should need to be done, but I also understand that there was some investigation a couple of years back on the site, and it's apparent degeneration is probably the best word I can find there. So I won't be supporting this tonight either. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Simpendorf, you're reserved.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been arduous to get through, and I think it's been said around the room, trying to get to this point and make decisions. Now with further information around the heritage overlay that doesn't appear to exist, and a significant amount of money has already been set around the room to follow the due diligence to know exactly what we're looking at, so that those processes have to take place if that's the decision we're going to make. But now there seems to be the option to not go down that path at all. And we obviously got Racing Wodonga and any other stakeholders that are looking to move on from that, and I guess progress the racecourse and all that comes with. So, you know, we're at a point here where I think decisions need to be made so we can all move forward, and that needs to be in the best interests of the community. Again, I'm probably at the same point here that as other councillors are, that it's a lot of ratepayers' money for a site that has changed significantly from its heritage value. There is now no heritage list there, and do we just move on from it? So I was hoping to hear a little bit more discussion around the room as to where that sits, but that's my view for it, and I won't be supporting this recommendation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. In exercising the ability to speak and speak last before the closing of debate, there's a whole range of things that I'd like to place in relation to this. The first is the building, although it does actually have a local heritage overlay in the planning scheme, as the Minister's letter says, it is not a heritage building under the Heritage Act, and it's not listed at a state significant level. So it's only the local planning scheme heritage overlay that applies. The building in itself has been so substantially shifted and changed that it bears little resemblance, perhaps other than Councillor Chamberlain referred to, in the actual apex of the roofline, to anything that was the building that was built there that would hold the heritage value. And unless we were prepared to spend the money, which would be some considerable sum, to return it to its heritage value, then I don't see the point of trying to repair a building that we know is in a very, very poor state of repair. It has been studied quite extensively, and we know that there are structural issues, otherwise we wouldn't have the building boarded off and segregated away from community use. So from that point of view, it seems a waste of resources to spend more money in investigating what might be involved in remedying the building, particularly if that remedy isn't going to put it back to its heritage value. And I'm hearing, everything I hear is that it's not going back, it wouldn't be going back to heritage value. It would just be making safe, which to me that just seems like a waste of ratepayers' money, as has been said by others. So from that point of view, I think we should not spend any more ratepayers' money on investigations, and we should pursue the options available to deal with it by other means. And I think we recognise that we have a decision made through the planning process with a previous application that refused consent to demolish, and under the planning law, if we brought another application that looked exactly the same as that application, then council is bound to refuse that application under planning law. So the application that might come on that sort of basis would have to be somewhat different. Doesn't have to be massively different, but it does have to be different for the council to make a decision to pursue that in accordance with the letter that the department has provided us. Back to the mover, Councillor Hall, for closure.
Yes, I like the fact that you noted that it is still recognised as a heritage locally. You know, we are the appointed committee of management for the building and for the racecourse area, and so I see we do have a responsibility. Doing this investigative work, look, might come up with a reasonable cost to make safety, and to look, I know from experience in building, to rebuild a pavilion like that would cost millions of dollars, and I think in the long run you could get to a safe userability, and it cost us far less, and we've got a grandstand. So, you know, I don't see why we won't go forward with it, but each to their own. So I support my motion going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Hall. All those opposed? Councillor Chamberlain, Councillor Simpendorfer, Councillor Mildren, Councillor Lowe. The motion is lost. I will take a second motion if somebody wishes to move one. There being no second motion, the matter lapses. Move on to the next matter on the agenda, which is the proposed variation to a contract of sale for lot 102, Bilston Drive, Barnawartha North. Do I have a motion? Councillor Chamberlain.
As per recommendation, thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hall, Councillor Chamberlain.
Yeah, this is a pretty straightforward request for a little bit of extra time. Can be very difficult, particularly in the current circumstances, to get your ducks in a row, to have your planning permissions all happening at the right time. And this hasn't happened here for a number of reasons, and I think it's probably appropriate to give them a little bit extra time to get it together and not lose what will be, I think, a good development out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Yes, look, I support the motion and the recommendations, that sometimes we need to be flexible as council. I believe in this case we do need to be flexible. This is a worthwhile sale for the community and for council, so with this I believe the council should support the recommendations in this report.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Other councillors? No? Councillor Hall to close? No, sorry, Councillor Chamberlain to close. Okay, put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. The next item is 7.6, Community Vision Strategic Engagement Plan. Do I have a motion? Councillor Simpendorfer. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hall, Councillor Simpendorfer.
Pretty important community vision there that outlines our aspirations for the future of the city, and is required under the Act, but this plan going through to 2050 is very important, so hopefully one that our community will get in and have a look at, but it speaks for itself, and I encourage everyone to have a good look at it, read through it and see how it does align. I think there is a note there, it does align with Albury cities as well, so working together collegiately as best as we can is a good vision. So sitting in that space of strategic planning and engagement certainly is where we need to spend our time, and is important for our city moving forward. I'll be supporting that going out. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Yes, I thought the presentation we received at our council briefing on the strategic engagement plan was really good. And I must say well done to Kelly Davies and the team for their work on this. So thank you. I support this going out for exhibition. I think it's important that we have a good engagement plan and look forward to the public feedback. Thank you.
Other councillors? Councillor Chamberlain?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo my fellow councillors' statements. This is an important thing with our community vision. And again, I'd also like to thank Kelly Davies on the presentation she gave us, which was very impressive and very convincing. And it'll be good to see the community feedback on this. Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah, as my fellow councillors have indicated, this engagement plan, coming off the back of the one that's going to supersede, it helps shape our vision and what we look like into the future. It also gives incoming councillors a document that's already in place that what the community has asked for and told. So it gives incoming councillors a good document to work with as well. And you'll note that the vision talks to all other policies as well, and all other policies talk to the vision because it's about what our community want. It's not about what I want, what you want, what individuals want, but our community as a whole. The identification for key stakeholder talks, and on both sides of the border, that is, because we are two cities, one community, so we need to talk to Albury's vision. Albury needs to talk to our vision. We've got our Albury Wodonga Health organisations, for example, that we need to talk to and listen to and incorporate into our 2050 vision. So I look forward to the feedback from the community and urge the community to get behind it.
Other councillors? No. This is the engagement plan is to be adopted under this recommendation, under this motion as it's moved. The engagement plan is the process by which we will engage the community to determine what it is that the community is putting to us. For the plan that's being done for the 2050 plan, which is the long-term strategic planning, which was done a good number of years ago and has driven the agenda for things that have happened, and a lot of very good things that have happened in the last 15 or so years. The work that's been done to set this engagement process up is excellent, and it's taking us into new areas of engagement with our community. I would urge all the groups in the community that have an interest in community activities to participate in this process. Any of the groups that would like to have council representatives and to come out and speak to their organisation, to give them background on what's going on and to get the information about it, and for them to make a contribution through that process, I would urge them to contact the council and line up a meeting. We plan under this engagement plan to actually go out and talk to as many of the different community groups as we can talk to. We want to get out and get wide consultation to understand what it is the community is seeking. Now, I will say that just because the community says they want something doesn't necessarily mean we can deliver it, and it doesn't necessarily mean it will get a priority. But everything needs to be put into the list, and then it's back to us as part of the process to get priorities and things set in place and to deal with those things that we can actually achieve and those things that we might not be able to. So from this point of view, this document is one of the best documents that we've put together for this type of thing for a long time, and it's a real credit to the staff who've put it together. We've worked it through briefings with councillors, and it's come out as a document that will work really well. And I really, really urge the community to get involved and to engage with the council on this matter. Councillor Simpendorfer to close. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. The next item is 7.7, the draft. Machine is playing. Sorry. Next item is the draft Albury-Wodonga Integrated Transport Strategy. Do I have a motion, please? Councillor Lowe, as recommended. Councillor Simpendorfer, Councillor Lowe.
Yeah, as I've stated a couple of times tonight, I'd prefer to talk to documents once it comes back from the community, and this is another one of those documents that integrated transport strategy that we're putting out for public exhibition and looking for community's feedback on this. So I look forward to their feedback and talk to them.
Thank you. Councillor Simpendorfer.
Yeah, same as Councillor Lowe. Again, our community needs to have a look at this, provide feedback. There's a lot of work has gone into this by some well-educated people in the field. So it's a strategic document. It's well versed. It's well put together. So get in, have a look, and provide your feedback is my view. So I'll support it to go out to the community.
Other councillors? Councillor Hall.
Yes, okay. I found this strategy to be more about a push to get people on bikes, public transport. I mean, I know there was a lot more other detail in it, but there was quite a significant mention about these items, and that's seen to be honourable. I do believe that that's not a bad thing, but in my view, I don't see it looks at the real picture. Wodonga is, for its size, a rather spread out city. And this may probably change with time, especially if we build more high density housing in the CBD going forward. But for now and the foreseeable future, car transport will be the most used form of transport to get around our city. Many of our new residential estates are some way out of town. Good public transport and bike paths will be vital infrastructure required, but will not solve the many issues people have with the issues of convenience. People's lifestyles require cars to get around. Dropping, picking up kids from school, kindergarten, daycare, shopping bags can be many and heavy, weather conditions, time poor, and work commitments, etc. Wodonga City also gets regular visitors from around surrounding rural areas and towns. Many come to Wodonga to do their weekly shopping, visit library, pool, restaurants, doctors, etc. Their means of transport will always most realistically be a car. So when we are looking forward with this strategy, these issues are important to be acknowledged. Wodonga Council in prior years promoted the development of many connective bicycle and walkway pathways. The bicycle paths were designed to connect all the way to the CBD centre, so this would keep the riders safe and off the roads. I now see it seems to be a mood to get bicycles onto roads and in their own bicycle lanes. Like many bicycle lanes you see in Melbourne, it in turn takes road space up from car traffic. I don't support this. I've seen the issues of congestion that this has created in many areas in Melbourne, and I wouldn't like to see those issues here. Riding bikes on the road isn't so much of an issue as having dedicated bicycle lanes. The Pearce Street bicycle lane in Wodonga is a small example. It can be problematic during busy times of the day, and I have been in the traffic and seen the traffic right up to the bridge at Willow Park. Because there's only one lane of traffic that goes down that road because of the bike lanes, and you can't turn left into Beechworth Road until just before the roundabout. This is because of the newly constructed bike lane on the road. There have been ideas about doing this along Beechworth Road and up to the roundabout that starts at High Street, Wodonga. Do not support this. Bicycles will always have a place, especially on bike paths, but not at the replacement of cars on roads. I support better transport linkages, yes. More bikes and walking paths, yes. But cars, especially in rural city like Wodonga, will always be the most used form of transport in our city in the foreseeable future, I believe, and possibly create congestion in our roads through encouraging more bicycle lanes in an already existing roads is not something I support.
Thank you. Other councillors? Councillor Chamberlain.
Yeah, and an interesting one, this one. I do appreciate the amount of work that's gone in to put this together. There is, as was stated, a very high priority put on alternative forms of transport other than cars. And again, that's probably to be applauded, but the reality is that cars for the foreseeable future, particularly in a city layout like we have, and it's not only people from within the city, but from people from outlying areas still need to be able to get into the city. And I don't have a problem with advocating for better public transport, for better accessibility for bicycles and pedestrians, but I'm a little concerned that maybe we might have tipped the balance a bit far on this one. You know, I've got about 30 seconds to work out which way I'm going to vote on this, and I'll determine that within the next 30 seconds, I'd suggest. But it's a tough one. I did attend the Albury City Council meeting, and I saw the discussion on that last week, and there were a couple of varied views. Their theory was to send it out and see what the community says, with a couple of councillors saying, I hope people realise that people have still got to get into town and they're going to use cars. But yeah, I'll make that decision very shortly, I'd suggest.
Thank you. I'm going to try and keep what I need to say short. It's very difficult with this one. This is a missed opportunity, in my opinion. Many of the detailed statements seem focused on the New South Wales situation and not the Victorian one. I won't go into the detail here. The overarching statements of objective and vision provide for all things to all people and present a reasonable strategic concept. However, the detail which interprets these overriding statements is leading to outcomes that are not in the best interest of Wodonga as a city connected to and somewhat reliant upon its hinterland and as much as its urban fabric. Like, people still have to come into this city to make it an economically viable place. We still have to have people coming in from the hinterlands. And there is simply no way we are going to be able to economically provide public transport to deal with that as an issue. The second component is Wodonga has developed as a disparate city. We have destination centres all over the place. We don't have one consolidated firm commercial centre which makes public transport across the city centre even easy. We find that difficulty every day. So whilst we have disparate commercial centres, we need to have a road system and a transport structure that deals with all of the different places that are destinations for the people that come to do commerce and to run their lives within this city. Whilst we're a regional city and we rely on the hinterland, we have to provide a convenient access and accessibility across our city. The four pillars are well-meaning in terms of all things to all people, but in the context of the fashionable issues of today, as distinct to the strategic planning lessons of history, I see there as a designed and directed towards very narrow outcomes and don't serve our city well into the future. As a fundamental underpinning, this strategy has a clear vision of removing cars from the city and building pedestrian and cycle priorities. When we've got a hinterland like we have and an economic situation like we have, we need to balance this, not give priority to the cycles and pedestrians. It needs to be balanced. These things will work against economic growth. This strategy appears to me as an activism created document, and in my interpretation, this strategy is based upon wrong base level assumptions that support a narrow, short vision, fashionable current issue focus, rather than the true strategic breadth of issue contribution. It seems to me to ignore the lessons of history in favour of modern fashionable concepts that history tells us will dilute and pass, but the outcomes of poor strategy will live on, and it will impact the community long term into the future. Generally, in my opinion, this strategy does not provide in the best interests of Wodonga. I believe the focus is wrong, and this is a missed opportunity. Back to point of clarification, Councillor.
just for my benefit, this is a draft integrated strategy, isn't it? So it's going out for public comment, and us being the public, with all the commentary that's been there, we have every opportunity to feed back into this.
Councillor Lowe.
The question for us, I'm just saying this is a draft strategy, and we have every opportunity to feed back into this draft strategy if we think we need to make it better. My question is, are we going to make individual submissions into this strategy?
Sorry, Councillor Lowe, I don't understand your question.
My question is, this is a draft strategy, and you've just sat there and articulated that the strategy is all wrong and it's all wrong. Are you going to feed back into the strategy and make it better, in your opinion?
Councillor Lowe, I don't understand the relevance of the question, but if the strategy is to get up around the table, then of course everybody has the right to feed into the strategy. If it doesn't, then we go back to whatever we go back to and do something different, or however it works. In my observation in answering your question, if a strategy is being put before us that we don't believe is something that we could set with, then it shouldn't be put out to the community, because that's misleading the community. If you're going to change it after the event of consultation, I think that's misleading. And I've expressed my opinion. Whether I've got enough people to support that opinion is another matter. Councillor Lowe, to close.
I'm pretty sure we've had this document up before us on a number of occasions, and we'll get it back up against us, so we'll have another opportunity to speak to it and improve it if necessary as well, from my understanding. So I look forward to those opportunities.
Okay, I put the motion. All those. Councillor Simpendorfer, Councillor Lowe. Those against? Councillor Chamberlain, Councillor Mildren, Councillor Hall. The motion is lost. I'm happy to take an alternative motion if anybody wishes to move one. No, the matter lapses. Thank you. Move on to item 7.8, which is National Homeless and Housing Plan Issues Paper, Council submission. Do I have a motion, please? As recommended, Councillor Simpendorfer. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lowe, Councillor Simpendorfer.
Yeah, it speaks to itself there, the purpose and intent behind this draft submission to the National Housing and Homelessness and the issues around affordable housing, where to from here, and our local situation. So again, like the last document, read it and really digest it, because we have to deal with this. There is significant issues, and we're seeing this not just locally but around the country with homelessness. And having travelled overseas recently, if we're going down that same road as some other countries that are similar to us, we're in big trouble. So getting this draft submission up and moving forward, I think, is a lot of work. It has been done, so thank you for that, and I'll support it to go out. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Lowe.
Yeah, I'm supporting this submission that that we've worked on collectively to help formulate as a council as a whole, if it gets up tonight. But it's also another one of those documents that, again, that every single community member can actually make a submission to this homelessness and housing plan issues. So if anyone thinks that we've missed something within this this submission, or they have a different view on it, then they're entitled to put in a submission themselves also. Because I do note this, it's talks to not only the homelessness but also housing affordability, what systems that we can put in place to make housing more affordable, whether it be for social housing, whether it be for our ratepayers. Things like using VicTrack land, getting the state government to divest land that they don't need, that in our personal circumstances that we can use to put affordable housing on. So there's many avenues. I do note that one of them was about speeding up planning processes, etc., which I think planning processes in general are pretty good. I think where it lays is land banking and developers land banking, so that's something that's a little bit harder to reach out to. But anyway, this is going in for a submission, and look forward to, again, the community if they want to get in behind it too. Thank you.
Other councillors? Councillor Chamberlain?
Yes, again, on balance, this is a tough one. This is a advocacy type document. I don't believe for 1 second that it's local council's business to be providing affordable housing. However, I think we do have a responsibility to advocate for the homeless and people who are less fortunate, to improve outcomes and give them a better chance to get housing. There are a number of issues, both federal and state, that are contributing a great deal to the difficulty in people being able to afford housing. And I think we need to push as hard as we can to try and resolve those issues. Again, on balance, I think I will support this document going out. Having said that, I'm a little bit iffy about the theory that we should be maybe providing some of the results, some of the solutions, because I don't think we're in a position financially or, morally to go ahead and do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other councillors? No? There's a whole range of things that are associated with this sort of stuff. We definitely have a role in advocating to the state and Commonwealth governments in regard to housing and homelessness in our community. But when you look at this, it's all an economic point where affordability has become difficult. We know that economic cycles go around and things change over time, but as a direct consequence of the cycle we're in right now, and as a direct consequence of a run of governments of both colours over probably 20 years or maybe more, dropping the ball in regard to providing public housing, we find ourselves in a situation now where we just don't have enough housing for the people that need public housing and low cost housing. So to some extent, there's a big job there for state and federal government to come back to it, and we should be trying to push that. I don't think things like incentives in the development system actually do anything but complicate the system and add to the malaise. I think Councillor Lowe is correct when he says the planning system isn't the actual problem, even though a lot of people hold it up as the outcome that needs to be changed. It's really a small bit player in the game, and in fact the way the system is at the moment, it's got such diverse abilities to be used for all sorts of different things. You can just about generate whatever you need out of it now if you go about it the right way. The most important thing, I think, is for government to get out of the way and let the housing be done in the marketplace, but to contribute to public housing and stay out of the market with the other stuff, and try and reduce the costs that are imposed as revenue raising outcomes, that governments have become reliant upon. I accept that we need to put this out and that we need to make this submission. There's a few bits and pieces in there that I probably don't think are the right answers, but nonetheless, on balance, this is what we need to do, and the submission is going to get the point across. So from that point of view, I'll be supporting the submission. Councillor Simpendorfer to close. Put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimously carried. Councillors, item 7.9, the report is a late report post the Audit and Risk Committee meeting today, and it's found on the tab on the left-hand column of our docs on tap. Do councillors need a moment to read it? No? Okay. Councillor Chamberlain, you wish to move a motion?
Due to the fact that it's probably not. Yep. I'll read it out because obviously it's a late inclusion due to the Audit and Risk Committee meeting today. And as the only councillor representative at that meeting today, because of Councillor Quilty being on leave, I think it's appropriate that I read the motion. My recommendation, or my move, that Council 1 approves in principle the financial statements, performance statement and report of operations for the year ended 30 June 2023. And 2, authorises Councillor Mildren and Councillor Chamberlain, myself, to certify the Wodonga City Council financial statements and performance statement for the year ended 30 June 2023 on behalf of Council, subject to any amendments or changes made as required by the Victorian Auditor General's Office. And 3, authorise Councillor Mildren to certify the Wodonga City Council 2022-2023 report of operations on behalf of Council, subject to any amendments or changes made as required by the Victorian Auditor General's Office. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hall, Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, this is obviously the financial statements. A hell of a lot of work's been done by our financial department to get these pulled together, particularly under some difficult stresses with staff levels and resources and time constraints. They've done a fantastic job, as was witnessed today by the Committee of Audit and Risk, which obviously looks into these things fairly carefully before recommending that they move on to the Council tonight for a decision to accept them. Fantastic job. There's a couple of elephants in the room in regards to actual finance positions, one of which is a change of methodology in the land under roads, which, to be perfectly honest, is neither here nor there when it comes down to it, but it changes a very great amount in our bottom line because of the way that it is valued. It's not as if we're going to be selling off land under road surfaces at any sort of level at any time. So in the wash, it probably makes not a hell of a lot of difference, but in the financial statements, it made a very big difference in a very big hurry. But it does bring us into line with other councils in the area as to how they value that land. So that's the big elephant in the room. There's a couple of other minor things, but generally speaking, I think they've done a hell of a job in pulling this all together, and I do applaud the finance department of the council for doing so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
No, I think Danny's probably, Councillor Chambers probably said it, he was at the Audit and Risk Committee, but it just says in the financial statements ending 30th of June 2023, summary is as follow. 1, net operational surplus of 19.8 million for the year. Total comprehensive, 2, comprehensive result 28.38 million. Net loss, which she was talking about with the roads, net loss on re-evaluation of land under roads is 107.68 million. That was just because, as Councillor Chamberlain had said, it's been calculated a different way. Net asset re-evaluation increment of 59.5 million, land, building and roads. Total assets of 795 million, including 740 million in property, infrastructure, plant and equipment. A cash of 44.5 million, including terms deposits. So just a little bit of a summary of those final statements.
Other councillors? Question?
Just quickly, in regards to points 2 and 3, subject to amendments or changes as required by the Auditor General's Office, how do we see them? Does that come back to us as council or the Audit and Risk Committee if there is any amendments or changes? Because reading that, we wouldn't see that come back to council. or does it come back through the Audit and Risk Committee? If they make any recommendations or changes, how do we see that? How does the community see that?
Got it. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So, as Councillor Chamberlain said, the financial statements, performance statements and report of operations went through the Audit and Risk Committee today. There was quite a significant amount of discussion with the external auditors. They have now submitted their final audit files to VARGO, so we're not for sign-off, so we're not expecting major changes. And I guess the other good thing was that there were no new management items either, so they were talking about how clean those financials were. Should there be any changes, they will go through the Audit and Risk Committee to be looked at, but this gives the Councillor Chamberlain and the Mayor will be certifying those financial statements based on what the Audit and Risk
Councillor Simpendorf, I'd also expect that there would be an element of reporting of that to the Budget and Finance Committee as well. Any other councillors or wish to speak? Back to Councillor Chamberlain to close.
Yep, again, I'd just like to reinforce my thanks. It became very obvious during the Audit and Risk Committee with the external auditors and the members of that committee that they were very impressed with the work done in pulling this together, particularly under some difficult circumstances, and I think we greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 7.10 is Finance and Budget Delegated Committee. Do I have a motion? Councillor Hall.
Look, I put forward the motion recommended in the report. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Chamberlain. Councillor Hall.
Okay. Look, these are the minutes from the Finance and Budget Committee. The committee meetings are streamed live, so you can revisit the meetings on our council webpage. The recommendations listed in the report, along with the rebudgeted capital works, the recommendations, are listed in the report, along with the rebudgeted capital works projects. I can read out the recommendations, which probably would be helpful. No?
The motion, yes.
Yeah, that's what that the minutes of the Finance and Budget Delegated Committee meeting held on Monday, August 28th, 2023, attached 1, be received. 2, that the budget variations as detailed in the June 2023 quarterly budget report be approved, resulting in the following change to the outcomes forecast to June 30, 2023. A council's interim operating budget surplus is 1.1 million, an increase from forecast 5.9 million deficit at March 31st, 2023. B, council's interim net capital expenditure is 35.4 million, a slight increase from the projected 35.2 million net capital expenditure at March 31st, 2023. Council's interim project cash position is 27.38 million, an increase from forecast 22.98 million at March 31st, 2023. The interim budget reports be noted. Number 3 and number 4, the capital projects identified in the attachment are approved for rebudget in the 2023-2024 budget.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this was something that headed towards the Audit and Risk Committee today for review. The elephant in the room, I suppose, is item 2A, where our operating budget surplus is 1.1 million. which is up from a forecast 5.9 million deficit. To be fair, that's got more to do with the fact that the government has paid federal assistance or grants prior to 30 June of 100%, which is unusual. And obviously once that money arrives, it has to be receipted and goes into the books. So that's roughly 6 million, which explains the most of that. If that continues to happen down the track, well, that'll continue and all balance out. Or at some point down the track, they may turn around and go to the old method, which means we'll have a bit of a hole somewhere that we need to make sure that we've maintained the money to fill. But that's the main variation in there, and it's all because of the financial assistance grants being paid early in full, which is unusual and a new development. Thank you.
Other councillors? Back to Councillor Hall to close.
Nothing more to add, thanks.
I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. The next item is reports for noting. And there are no reports for noting. Reports for information. Record of councillor meetings. Any comments? Decision register. Any questions or comments? Competitive services. Questions or comments? This is not, there we go. Notices of motion, of which there are none. Petitions. Madam Acting CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we've received a petition in regarding the removal of the pine trees outside the tennis centre in Lawrence Street. We had 35 original signatures in the petition that first came in. We've received another 22 extra signatures, which takes the total to 57 signatures on the petition. 54 of those are residents from Wodonga, 3 are from outside Wodonga. Also would like to just comment that the petition, as well as any correspondence that related to the removal of the pine trees, has been provided to councillors prior to the council meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Chamberlain.
My motion is as per option 1, to continue with the planned removal of the pine trees in Lawrence Street and continue to plan for the development and reconfiguration of Lawrence Street and the precinct more generally. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hall. Councillor Chamberlain.
While I note the petition and the will of the people about protecting our environment by retaining as many trees as possible, can I state that there are 18 pine trees that have been doing a lot of damage to the curb and gutter and the tennis centre, as well as the fence which runs adjacent to them and makes it very difficult for any repairs on that fence to go ahead in good conscience whilst those pine trees exist. This has been an ongoing issue. My understanding is that this was first raised as an issue some 18 years ago, and it has been allocated funds by previous councils, which for whatever reason, and I know the last reason was that the overspend on the bridge in Lawrence Street, to actually have them removed previously. While I do note the statements that are made, these trees are not native. The cockatoos may very well use them for some food source. However, it's not their natural food source, and I think there are other options. And if I may just ask a question for the relevant officer through you, were there any such petitions, because I'm a new councillor obviously, or relatively, any such petitions when we removed hundreds of trees from the area out at Barnawartha Fields? Because they were native and there wasn't 18, there was hundreds of them literally. So can I ask if we had any petitions or notices at the time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So no, there wasn't, I don't recall. I don't believe there was a petition received for the removal of those trees, largely because I think the information was provided as part of the project around that the trees at that location were planted as a harbour or for livestock to, I guess, have harbour on that site. With it becoming a sporting precinct, obviously they will be removed and the harbouring not required for livestock. So I don't believe is the answer to your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, I can just state that they are non-native. They're doing a lot of damage, and it is only step one of what is going to be an ongoing refurbishment, repair, and I would hope improved facility with including plantings when it comes back around. And the other thing I'd like to note is this council plants somewhere around 2,000 trees a year. This is 18. We've got some balance here. Thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Yes. Look, I'm not a person that's keen on cutting down the trees. You can ask my husband; he tries to cut them down, and I go off my head. But so cutting down the trees cutting out any trees for me is a bit of a pulling out teeth. But I'm a realist, and I understand that these trees have been a problem for some time. And the issues that it's created. I used to take my kids to play tennis when they were younger, and I'd sit under them as well. But they don't give you that much great shade, to be quite honest. But they've gotten very large, and at some stage, either now or in the distant future, we're going to have to deal with these trees, with the mess that they create, and the cost to clean it up, and the destruction that they also create. The tennis centre have continually over the years had issues with it, and they've notified council with this, the fence and the grass under the trees. As Councillor Chamberlain said, they're not native trees, and they're actually considered weeds by many, very environmental standards. I had a bit of a research on them. If you do a bit of a small amount of research, you'll find the yellow-tailed cockatoos, who frequently as trees from time to time, will eat radiated pine cone nuts. But in doing so, they can spread the seeds, which can become weed issues elsewhere. And I found the site, it's called Backyard Buddies, which is an educational website that is an initiative by the Foundation for National Parks and Wildlife, non-profit organisation on a mission to protect Australia's ecosystems and native species. The site also suggests to go native with plantings. And I mean, as Councillor Chamberlain mentioned, we in Wodonga plant thousands of native trees every year in our city. And it attracts a lot of native wildlife. And I am for cutting these trees because I don't want to spread any more radiated pine trees within the community for a start. You just look at our waterways, they're full of willows and other non-native trees and bushes, and they're choking the systems up. I read an article here, it's just called Australian Weeds, or Weeds of Australia, and it says native ecosystems, radiated pine, can have a dramatic effect on the environment. The thick pine leaf litter can reduce the fertility and change nutrient cycles in the soils as well as changing the water cycle. The leaf litter will also create a thick layer that prevents seedlings establishing, especially of native species, reducing plant diversity in areas. Radiator pine is considered a threat in Australia, and they're known to invade into open environments, both native remnant vegetations and forests. In open eucalyptus forests with consequent reduction to species diversity. The main methods of dispersal for radiator pine is through seed transportation by wind and wildlife, additionally dispersal by water and the sale of plants through nurseries. The it says here, the radiator pine seeds are known to be distributed up to 1 kilometre by wind and further wildlife such as yellow-tailed cockatoos. There are records of plants growing more than 2 kilometres away from nearest plantations. Anyway, having said that, I would like maybe going forward that the council have a look at some of the native foods that these cockatoos do eat and maybe include them in our plantings if we don't already. I think we do, but just double check on that going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Other councillors? Councillor Simpendorf, a question?
I won't go into the petition that's been signed. I welcome the community that have put that together, and there's a significant number of signatures, 57, what was that? And the second part of that motion is confirming the decision to spend that money. I think I spoke to that motion last time around the cost to council for that and the tennis centre, but I did note in there, and just the question is, on page 4 of 9, through you, Mr Mayor, the relevance of the sentence that it followed the secretary meeting, the Wodonga Mayor and MP Bill Tilley at the Junior Championships being held at Kelly Park. What's the relevance of that community engagement? And if it is relevant to this, then what was that conversation? Page 4 of 9. Under community engagement, second paragraph. Just don't see that that's relevant to this decision, and if it is deemed relevant because it's in there, then what was the conversation?
Good question. It was probably a matter that was we were lobbied on whilst we were doing the civic duties at the tennis, the youth championships early in the year, but don't remember anything of absolute locked-in formal conversation. I don't doubt that there was lobbying went on, because there's lobbying goes on every time I bump into anybody from the tennis centre. But I don't think it was any more than that.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I just fail to see the relevance for it, but I think my main issue with this is that the reasons the tennis club are putting there is just around inconvenience and risk of falling cones hitting players or pedestrians. It's, you know, the balance for me is how much cost is the trees doing to Lawrence Street and our infrastructure versus the inconvenience of the tennis centre. I get it, and I want to see the tennis centre thrive and get better. But I just applaud the community engagement. I don't think I'll support this going back, because I'm not a fan of the cost of removing all these. I'd prefer to see it a bit more shared, but I do acknowledge the petition and those that have done it and those that have written in, so I won't be supporting it as is for those reasons. Thank you.
Other councillors? So low.
Yeah, just a question through you, Mr Mayor. Just a question I got back from community. What is the actual dollar terms for the removal of the trees component? I'm not sure who the relevant person.
Acting CEO.
Through you, Mr Mayor, if I can refer to Officer Schultz for the exact figure. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, through you, it's my understanding the tender awarded for the works is in the order of $22,500 for the removal of 18 trees. Thereabouts, less than $25,000, which includes which includes quite a lot of traffic management over 3 or 4 days for the lopping of the trees.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as I said, a community asked me, and I was struggling to find the figure to help them out with, and also on a little bit of history of it. But I've got a brief summary now that I'll read out for the community, but for their benefit, because they haven't seen this either. But it was first raised as a prior to the 2019 budget. It was in the master plan for a recommendation for Kelly Park, which was updated in 2019 and subject to community consultation back then. There's a big gap that brings it up to February, March 2023, but I do note that in my prior council term, it was brought to us as a part of a bigger roadworks project, delivering into the Lawrence Street bridge, and that where the funding actually eventually ended up. But it was part of that master planning that was proposed that those trees would get removed, but then remediated, and we'd end up with some sort of shade structures or that in its place. So I won't speak specifically to that because I'm just shooting off the top of my head there. But again, to Councillor Sippendorfer's point, it was re-raised again in March this year by the tennis club, asking for, in our budget things, that the trees were proposed for removal under this is a submission by the tennis club. Request as follows: tree removal along Lawrence Street. This is our biggest priority and requires immediate action. The trees were proposed for removal under the 2019-20 draft council budget under the Lawrence Street Works project. The trees cause a considerable impact on the tennis centre, curator, as time is taken up each day with the pine needle cone chip removal from courts, as well as the impact of the trees drawing water away from the grass courts. Council pay an annual $5,000 to the tennis centre to account for some of this time. The impact includes 3 hours spent by the curator each morning before play to remove pine cones, needles and chips from the courts. 50 to 100 cockatoos inhabit the trees and are creating a mess with dropping cones and generating chips. The same birds have destroyed 5 tennis nets by eating through the netting. The same birds are causing damage to the grass court surface. And point 3 is there is a health risk with falling cones hitting players, pedestrians, as well as cars travelling along Lawrence Street, hitting cones and creating missiles for pedestrians. C, if the trees were removed, the tennis centre would explore artificial shade options along Lawrence Street during our various tournaments and country week events. April 23, the request was included in the infrastructure request report put up to the April 17 council meeting. The offer recommendation was as previously stated, and then May, June went into a budget exhibition, and then June 23 was brought back up to us, and here's the petition. So that was, I was just speaking to the background on that. None of that's my personal opinion, and I ran out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. There is a long history of the pine trees causing trouble. There's also an increasing risk and potential liability to council from debris from the pine trees, particularly within the road reserve, and particularly with cars throwing pine cones up, or bikes hitting them, or even people on bikes or pedestrians being hit by cones that get thrown up by cars. They're just the mechanical things that put a justification in front of the council to be responsible in the way it manages urban environment in terms of public safety and liability. That's all the other issues aside. That's just one aspect of it. We have to try and do things that make the tennis centre a strong and viable facility, because it is our facility. We own the tennis centre facility. It's operated by the committee that runs the tennis and other groups that function on the site. But we have a responsibility both to maintaining our asset and to providing outcomes that are safe in our community. These trees are, in essence, a weed species. We really should be providing some other better urban environment with better planted species, and probably if we do the consultation and the design work right, we could end up with more than the 18 trees planted in that vicinity. They'll be different sorts of trees, obviously. But I think this is a project that has good outcomes. In terms of environmental impacts, I just find it really difficult to reconcile in the circumstances and context where we are, and the other environmental things that our community takes an interest in. And we see, Friends of Willow Park and all the groups that do all that magnificent work, that work with the council and help to plant all the additional trees. That's sound environmental activity. The removal and replacement of these trees with good trees that fit the urban environment, I think is an important outcome. Councillor Chamberlain to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, I think it's important to note the damage that is being done by these trees to the curb and gutter on the road reserve, as well as the impact on the tennis courts and the fencing. And to reiterate again, this is only step one of what is going to be an ongoing process in order to repatriate that entire area. But I think it's an important step, because I think there was some opinion out there that this was an important thing that needed to happen, and it just kept getting pushed down the road. And it looked to some people like it was never going to happen, and it needs to. So step one, due to budgetary constraints, is remove the trees. There is an allocation made in there in the next couple of years to ensure that we get the planning right and get the repatriation right. And as I said, the important thing here to remember is, although it's never great to remove a tree, 18 is not a big number, particularly in the scheme of what we do. And given the fact that we're going to plan carefully what we do in its place, I think it's important to get this thing done. So again, can I just clarify that resolution? It was item 1, but I don't think we've actually read the actual resolution out.
You can read the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the resolution is, 1, that the council acknowledges and notes the letter from Friends of the Earth dated the 7th of September 2023 and what is now the 57 signature petition dated 8th of September 2023 opposing the removal of the pine trees in Lawrence Street. 2, that the council confirms its decision of 29 June 2023 to allocate $100,000 in the 23-24 financial year and $350,000 in the 24-25 financial year to the Wodonga Tennis Centre tree removal project, and confirms their removal as per the awarded tender and schedule of works. And 3, that the petition lead be advised of council's decision on this matter. I think that basically says what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Chamberlain, Councillor Mildren, Councillor Hall, Councillor Lowe. Those against? Councillor Simpendorfer. The motion is carried. The next item is general business. Does anybody wish to have general business? No? Okay. Urgent business? Any urgent business? No? In that case, sorry. Okay, Councillor Chamberlain.
I apologise, just on the general business. I think it would be remiss of us if we didn't identify the funeral of John Watson. A number of councillors attended and staff, and I think it was absolutely appropriate. We closed the offices for a couple of hours there to enable the staff members to attend. Someone who was a genuinely good man and had the thoughts of Wodonga at the forefront of his mind at every time. I didn't necessarily agree with everything he thought, but that's beside the point. There is never any doubt about the way he felt about this town. And I think it was absolutely appropriate what we did to honour his passing. Thank you.
Thank you. The next is 14, confidential business. Do I have a motion to close the meeting to the public? Councillor Lowe, Councillor Chamberlain. No point for discussion. I put that motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. The meeting is now closed to the public. Thank you. Welcome back to the very short, inconfidential component of our meeting. Pass to the acting CEO to read out the public. Okay, sorry, adopt it first. A motion to adopt the in-camera resolution. Councillor Chamberlain, Councillor Lowe. Any debate? Put that motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Sorry, now pass to the acting CEO to read the resolution, the public version of the resolution.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That, subject to a heads of agreement being entered into and generally in accordance with the key terms below, Wodonga Council gives notice under Section 114 of the Local Government Act 2020 that it intends to sell the land described as Lot 4, being a portion of Lot 4 on PS 549776X, located adjacent to Roche Drive, Barnawartha North, Logic. 2, that the public notice stipulates that persons may make a submission in respect of the proposal in accordance with the Council's community engagement policy, and that written submissions must be received no later than a date that is at least 21 days after publication of the public notice. 3, that the Council receives a further report upon the completion of the public consultation period to determine whether to proceed with the sale or not. 4, that Council authorises the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate and enter into a heads of agreement with the proponent, purchaser, for the sale of the land shown on Lot 4 on the attached plan, being a portion of Lot 4 on PS 549776X. The key terms of the heads of agreement shall generally be known as follows. 1, price. The purchase price will be $1,575,000 exclusive of GST, based on a land area of 2.5 hectares. 2, deposit. A 10% deposit of $157,500 exclusive of GST will be payable on the day of sale. 3, settlement. Settlement shall be 6 months after the day of sale. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. There being no further business for the council for the meeting, I declare the meeting closed at 7:45.